Hi, everybody, and welcome to Birth Talk. We are a minute early. Isn't that great? We're all set up and ready to go. And so I want to welcome you and welcome Jody. Hi, Jody.
Hi. Good day today. Every day is good.
It's a great day. And this is our 5th week that we're talking. And we've had different topics each time, and they all overlap. They overlap into the topic of a woman's worth, a mother's importance in our culture, the importance of breastfeeding, being assertive with your intentions. That's what we're going to be talking about today. Speaking up for yourself. We know that
without harming anyone.
Without harming anyone, that's very good. That is where the communication skills come in. They come in, you're compassionate and sensitive and communication skills. So we're not talking about being domineering, being manipulative, being.
Oh, yes, we are.
We are?
Oh, yes. But we're doing it in a way that does not diminish us and what we have to say. And it does not diminish, because if we want what we want and we're doing the best we can to get it, what is that?
That's serving us. However, the word domineering, my husband.
It was manipulation that I responded to.
Okay, manipulation, domineering. I know that oftentimes in many relationships, sometimes there's a power struggle. Sometimes one partner is stronger than the other. And I can tend to be domineering. I have to be very compassionate of not bulldozing over my husband. So the word domineering to me, I don't want to be domineering.
No, I don't either, because then the idea that we're women and that we're feminine, that we need to be cared for. I can take care of myself pretty well. Thank you very much. But there are times that I need someone to advocate for me, to do their best for me, to know who I am before they put the knife to my knee.
Yeah.
And if I use a manipulative technique, which is not insincere, this is what I do to get what I want. I want to know who you are, and I want you to know who I am. And I think the manipulation is towards myself. I'm manipulating myself so I can get the best person for the job.
Okay.
So I have to frame my communications in such a way that I'll know without wasting a lot of time if he's the one or if he's not.
Okay. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I would agree with that. So anyway, today we want to talk about speaking up for yourself and, just showing your worth. Your worth is very important. You have a say. So welcome, everybody. Feel free to join the conversation and write your comments. We'll be happy to entertain
any
questions or comments or anything like that. And this is such a wide open topic that we could really start anywhere. We're also going to be talking about it in the context of patient-doctor relationship, extremely important.
Or midwife-mother relationship.
Midwife, mother, husband, wife, just
children.
And it's very important because when I wrote my book almost 25 years ago, Unassisted Home Birth, An Act of Love, I really wanted to hone in on the topic of why women do not make courageous choices or different choices because they want to belong, because they want comfort, their tribe. And lots of times when we women make decisions in life, it might not be really what we want, but it keeps the peace. And so sometimes it is good to keep the peace with relationships, but when you are giving up your internal path or desires to the extent of pleasing someone to the extreme, that is not healthy. You're not.
Can I give you a story?
Yes.
The person I was married to embraced breastfeeding pretty well. He didn't have a problem with it. Which pleased me very much. And then as I met new people, talked to more people. I was unhappy with my obstetrical birth. And I thought, well, some of the women in my group had their babies at home or at a clinic, not at a hospital. And, I'm kind of thinking about that. The first time I heard about somebody having their baby at home, I thought they were nuts.
Mm-hmm.
But then after I had my baby in the hospital, I went, oh, well, maybe they've got a point.
Yeah.
And so I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely no.
You couldn't do what? You couldn't do what?
Go in the direction of, let me turn that off.
Okay. All right. I just want to clarify, you couldn't have the home birth or you couldn't go to the hospital again. So let me read a comment. Jody, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. I'm just going to read a comment from Cambry. Congratulations, Cambry. I believe she's due very soon, maybe with her first child. I'm not sure. Cambry says, I had a time this week where I had to advocate for myself and make sure midwives wore masks to my house for every visit because they showed up to the last meeting with no masks, and it gave me so much anxiety right now. Thankfully, Susan Fierro-Baig has been a guest. We've talked a few times. Susan reminded me I have to do that. And Cambry is so glad it went well and had no problems. So sometimes it's just simply asking someone a question and just having the courage.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, her first child is due on May 26th, any day now. So good luck to you, Cambry, and stay strong. And everything's going to go well, and keep confident. Mama
gets whatever Mama wants. If she asks the midwife, don't wear a red T-shirt because it reminds me of blood, then the midwife has an obligation not to wear a red T-shirt because it doesn't make sense, but that was her request.
Right.
And from the person who made the request, it's a valid request. And so it's a small thing to concede on the mask, the color of the T-shirt, those kinds of things. And so if it's what she wants and it's not going to harm anybody, what's the problem in resisting that request? If someone resists a request like that, that's so simple, that is a red flag.
It is a red flag. It shows the person has an ego or an attitude who does not want to comply with something. It shows a lack of respect in my mind.
Yeah, if she starts defending, her notion that she should wear red, then whether what the woman is saying is legitimate in her eyes or not, she is doubting the woman's confidence in herself.
Yeah.
And we can't function as well as we might in that kind of a situation. Okay, so I want to have this baby at home, and I can't get any support. I mean, there is absolutely no wiggle room at all.
Okay.
So I had our second child in the hospital as well, but I did assert my authority in a couple of ways, which I could not be stopped. And one was I was in labor all night. I didn't say anything. And at 6 o'clock in the morning, I knew it was time to go in.
Yep.
And so Tim said, I'll go start the car. I said, no, I'm walking. And he said, no, you're going to ride in the car. And I said, you can take the car and I'm going to walk. It was like 3 blocks.
Okay.
And I said, it's your choice. You can either walk with me or you can drive in the car. And so I walked and he decided to walk with me.
Good.
But, that was something I wasn't going to budge on.
Yeah.
Anyway, so now it's years and years later, and there eventually was no third child, except in my dream.
Oh.
I had a third child. And by this time, I've been a maternity care reform activist for 12.5 years.
Okay.
And I knew.
Yeah.
And he would not. And so in my dream, like a a good wife, I went into the hospital to have this baby.
Okay.
And I resisted some of the interventions. No, I didn't resist them. I delayed them.
Okay.
Now, well, maybe we can do that in another hour.
All right.
Or why don't you just listen to the baby with a fetoscope and not put the ultrasound fetal monitor on? Because I'll let you monitor the baby as often as you want to, but I would prefer not to have that thing around my belly because it makes me uncomfortable. I feel tethered.
Yeah.
And so I was able to use my explanation to resist or delay their intervention. And, it wasn't like, I'm not going to have that. I said, I feel tethered, and who wants to be tethered when they're in labor?
Right.
Okay, so then I knew the baby was really close. Now I'm still in my dream.
Yeah.
I knew the baby was really close. And so I said I had to go to the bathroom. So I went into the bathroom, and I tell you, in my dreams, I am so brilliant.
Yeah.
And I closed the door and I went as I clicked the lock.
Yeah. Okay.
And they have these wonderful Turkish towels, like at the best hotels.
Okay.
And so I laid a couple of them on the floor, and I squatted over them, and the baby slid right out.
Okay.
So I am picking up my baby, and the cord is still between my legs because everything's still attached. I pick up my baby and kind of wrap her in a fresh towel so she looks clean and, presentable. And I unlock the door and step out. And everybody was mad at me.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Everybody was mad at me.
Oh.
And I had the presence of mind in my dream to say, why are you all mad at me? And without missing a beat, they said, because you did it by yourself.
Wow. Is that where the dream ended? And what does that mean?
I just smiled and, packed up and went home. But then it was such an insight. Do we really want women to know that they can do these things on their own? Do we?
I personally do. I want other women. I do. I absolutely.
We're talking about the other paradigm. I read a Western. And it's funny where these things crop up because I like to read all over the place.
Okay.
My screening tool is it in large print?
Okay.
and whatever genre it is less important than whether it's in large print. So in this Western cowboy story, the doctor says, well, I got to get back to town. Mrs. Jones is in labor. And if she finds out she can do this all by herself, I'll be out of business.
Yeah, see that? Exactly. Exactly. Yep. The price that is paid, the price you pay. You pay.
And I have another story.
Okay.
And I told you part of this before. It was about the Alexes, and they decided to have their cesarean on when she went into labor rather than on a pre-selected date.
Okay.
Well, anyway, then there was another baby and another one, and I think maybe another one.
Mm-hmm.
And the second one she had at home with, or the third one, 2 cesareans, a third one at home with a midwife, fourth one at home with a midwife, fifth one at home, midwife wasn't there.
Okay.
She didn't make it. And so it was about 9 o'clock on Sunday morning, and Grant, the dad, knocks on the door, and he said, come quick. And so I just went over there, and he said, does everything look okay? And she is in the kneeling position, which I had told you she gave birth when she was supposed to have a cesarean because she was in the kneeling position. The baby slid out. Okay, so she's sitting on the bed. She's in the kneeling position. And, she has the baby up like this, and the baby is nuzzling. The cord is still attached. Everything's fine. Baby's a nice color. She's smiling. And he says, "Does everything look okay?" I said, "Yeah, it does." Yeah. And then he left the room, and I saw him in the mirror that they had in the bedroom. Yeah. And he jumped straight up in the air, did a scissor kick, came down, and then came back into the bedroom.
Oh, that's so sweet. That is awesome. Look at the happiness on the husband's, Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, now the rest of the story.
A victory. He did a victory dance.
But he didn't want to. It was a private moment for him.
Yeah, a private victory dance. Yeah.
Yes. Really sweet. He had no business doing a victory dance in the bedroom because she's the one who did all the work.
Right. He's very respectful. And this is how women feel when they do things according to what they want. We feel like we want to do a victory dance. We're and it gives us like the power and the confidence to go on with the next day, to be the mom, to keep on going day to day. And assertiveness begets assertiveness. You're a little courageous in one area with one comment, and then play with it in another comment, in another situation. And lots of times you have to stand up for yourself with customer service to get your money back or to get a new product. And you actually can cause mental and physical ill health if you don't speak up for yourself and stand for yourself. Mm-hmm. And you could resentment. How many women have you known?
But the only time you can do that is if you actually know what you're dealing with.
That's another good point to bring up.
If you're being gaslighted,
yeah,
and you have no idea what gaslighting is,
mm-hmm.
and you don't have any history of it or experience with it,
yeah,
the only thing that makes sense to you is self-doubt, loads and loads of self-doubt.
Yeah,
it's only when you read a book or see a movie or talk to a friend. The movie that I watched was called Gaslight.
Right.
I went, oh my goodness, that's what was going on.
Mm-hmm.
So back to my next door neighbor's birth.
Okay.
And maybe a half hour later, the midwife pulls up.
Yeah.
And she sees that the baby's there and everybody looks fine. And she goes out to the car and brings her oxygen tank.
Which is not needed, but okay.
And she does a blow-by under the baby's nose.
To make herself feel useful, to justify her charge payment. What's it all for?
Later on, I asked her why she did that.
Uh-huh.
She said, well, I felt like I should do something.
Exactly. See, look at that.
Yeah. And, I've heard doctors say that too.
Yeah.
Well, I just couldn't stand around and wait. I had to do something. So I did an episiotomy. I couldn't just wait. So I did something. I did rupture of membranes.
Yeah.
I couldn't stand around and do nothing. So I told her to change positions and stand or squat or do whatever she wants. Oh, wait, he doesn't do that. That's outside his range of expertise.
Right.
There are a few doctors,
knowledge and experience.
There are a few doctors who do that.
Yeah.
And one of my friends attended births in a hospital setting, very much like a midwife, a very good midwife, a very uninterfering midwife would attend a birth at home. Mm-hmm. And to discredit him and hopefully humiliate him, his colleagues at the hospital called him the Burger King doc.
Okay, wow.
Have it your way.
Oh, wow. Okay.
He let women have it their way.
Good. Yeah.
But nobody thought it was good. And then women from 100, 200 miles away would start coming to this little tiny hospital in this little tiny community to have their babies.
Yeah.
And what was it, Polson? Montana to have their babies. Women from Whitefish would drive south to this little tiny hospital to have their babies because the word got around that he will let you do what you want, including delayed or not cutting the cord, including water birth.
Yeah.
Anyway,
what year was this? This was long ago. Was this the 1980s?
This would have been, let's see, this would have been the mid-90s.
All right, mid-90s. And do you know what? That can bring a lot of business. People were still unhappy. That can still bring a lot of business to the hospital.
That's what happened. He changed the revenue flow of that hospital tremendously.
Mm-hmm.
But they got rid of him anyway.
Did they want C-sections and even more revenue? And they wanted to...
Also, he had an incredibly low cesarean section rate and a very good VBAC rate. I mean, everything that we would want from a really, really excellent obstetrician is what he provided.
Yeah.
Even though he was bringing additional revenue into their facility and giving the facility an excellent reputation.
Yeah.
He was chief of staff as well, and he lost his position as chief of staff, and then he was just kind of nudged out.
Which is too bad because his model could be caught on to other hospitals if they really
and then I'm thinking again, why wouldn't they want increased revenue? Why wouldn't they want? And the problem is they were all 12 years old and like 12-year-old girls. Well, I don't like her because she's prettier than me.
Oh, yeah.
And so it was that 12-year-old competitive mentality is, well, I can't stand beside someone who lets women do whatever they want. I can't stand beside someone who has better statistics than I do. Because he was changing the playing field. To them, good statistics was a high cesarean section rate. And actually, his name was Jan Eric Stroll. I just remembered. And he thought a low cesarean section rate was the standard that one would hope to achieve.
Right.
And when you have two paradigms, it's like oil and water.
It is.
Unless you have an emulsifier, like mustard or an egg yolk when you make dressing.
Yeah.
That's the emulsifier. It allows the oil and the vinegar to mix without immediately separating.
I'm sorry to say, but in our culture, I don't think we want people, the powers to be do not want emulsifiers. They don't want the secrets out. They don't want the empowerment out. So what I thought coming to me is that sometimes we're saying, speak up for yourself to your doctor in the hospital. Sometimes you just need to drop out. I found I've had to drop out in life.
I call it voting with your feet.
Yeah, voting with your feet. I've done that all my life because
you don't have to do anything disrespectful. You just say, thank you for your time. The information you provided to me was very helpful.
Yeah.
And then you walk out and don't make any follow-up appointments.
Right.
And let him wonder what happened.
Yeah. Or he may not even notice. Just on to the next patient, I think they notice if someone is vocal and goes public, and not many people create that kind of a buzz. I did that too, and people that I cared very much about lost their jobs. Wow. Yeah, interesting.
I did that too.
Okay. Any stories worth sharing on that? Any stories worth sharing?
One of the vice presidents of Blue Cross Blue Shield, it's now called Noridian in North Dakota, was coming to my community for some kind of bigwig meeting. And I knew that Blue Cross Blue Shield was the key factor in whether or not home births were going to be recognized and paid for at a much lower level than what the cost would be in a hospital setting.
Okay.
And I just couldn't get anywhere with them. They were just, too far removed from, we're talking about lowering costs and good outcomes. It was a few years after that I found out that Blue Cross Blue Shield does not want to lower costs.
Right.
Because they get to keep 6% of everything they process.
Okay.
So if they process fewer claims, then that's less that they get to keep. They say they want to lower costs.
Okay.
But when I learned through the system, it didn't look like that to me.
Yeah.
So I went to the librarian, and she and I had commiserated from time to time. I spent a lot of time at the medical library. And she's the one who printed out that's when things were printed out in long strips and not in single pages.
All right.
I can't remember what that, so we're talking a long time ago.
All right.
And I said, would you look up ultrasound, problems with ultrasound to the babies? And she said, well, I can't look it up using that criteria, but I will look it up using the keywords obstetrics, ultrasound, hazard.
Okay.
That thing was 25 feet long.
Wow.
And we're talking the middle 80s.
Yeah. So yeah, we've known a long time that that ultrasound is not what it's cracked up to be, and it should be avoided for routine.
Especially in the Seattle area, we know that whales don't like ultrasound.
Yeah.
But yet we continue to subject our babies to it.
Yeah.
And when the baby's going, they're saying, look, he's waving at us.
Yeah.
And what he's saying is, what is that? What is it? Get it away from me.
Yeah.
And what can you do? What can you do? Things are reframed. Oh, look, he wants to wave to his mom and dad. I mean, for crying out loud. Okay, now the vice president of Blue Cross Blue Shield, one of them, and she said, "Oh, I asked if I could use the library table space for a meeting with him." And she said, "Oh, I'm sorry. We've got testing that day, so we can't do it." She said, "Why don't you call upstairs to the administrator secretary and ask her if you can use the meeting room?"
Okay.
And so I called and I said, so-and-so, the librarian, said that they had testing on that day. So I was wondering if it would be possible to use your conference room for a meeting with so-and-so, Blue Cross Blue Shield.
Yeah.
Oh, sure. And I went, well, that was easy.
Yeah.
But see, I had dropped a magic word, which was the librarian's name, because then it looked like I was part of the system.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I wasn't trying to do that, but that's the only thing that I can think of that got her to yes so quickly. Okay, so would you like coffee or any kind of refreshments?
Okay.
For this meeting? And I said, probably just water, would be fine. Okay, well, we can do that. And so I contacted him about this meeting, and he didn't know who I was.
Okay.
He didn't know who I was. And since the meeting was on the hospital proper, he thought that it was fine.
Right.
I was like part of the system.
Okay.
And then I also invited a midwife, a couple of home birth moms, one of my legislators to take notes, and my friend who was a reporter and photographer for the local paper, a photographer and a reporter, a really good investigative reporter, is who I invited to this meeting. And so we got there, and he said, well, who is everybody? And I said, well, this is a friend, so-and-so, and so-and-so, and so-and-so.
Yeah.
And the legislator, I said, I asked her to come and take notes. And this is a reporter from the Minot Daily News, and this is their photographer.
All right.
Well, what's this meeting about? And I said, we're going to talk about reducing the cost of maternity care while improving the outcomes. And I said, the key to that is using obstetricians when they're necessary, and using midwives when they aren't.
Yeah.
I said, obstetricians are overqualified to attend a normal birth. It's like having a master mechanic clean your windows.
Right. Yeah.
You know, it's a waste of his precious time to have him doing something so mundane.
Right.
And then the women told their stories about having the babies at home. The midwife told her story about if this is a better quality of care for some women, not all women, but many women. And if this is what they choose, then it should be covered by insurance. And the legislator had some questions of her own. Of course, the reporter had some really good questions. Anyway, it ended up on the front page of the paper the next day with the most incredibly unflattering photograph of this guy.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. And thank you to my photographer. You know, we just laid it out there while we were having this meeting, and he was totally resistant to anything that we had to say. The only reason he came to the meeting was because he thought it was about medical stuff.
Right.
And to us, we thought it was about being responsible with our health care and medical care dollars. And that's when I found out, you know, it's not what I thought it was. There's something else going on here, and I got to figure that out.
Yeah.
And do what you can. One of the things that I did at that time is I put together a little brochure. It said, just say no. It had a woman in the lithotomy position with her legs in stirrups, hooked up to an IV, trying to give birth. And inside it was all the reasons that a woman shouldn't be on her back to give birth, with the medical references.
Yeah.
And I went through the library, and every place that they had a picture of a woman in the lithotomy position in all these books and articles, I stuck one of those in there.
Okay, good.
And I thought, you know, years and years to come, somebody's going to say, wow, what's all this?
Yeah.
You know, and I had to do something, but there was nothing that I could do except hopefully reach someone who said, oh yeah, gravity, I get it.
Yeah.
And during this process, I also met someone through the North Dakota Health Department, and he saw how incredibly hard I was trying and how impossibly difficult it was to get any kind of understanding of what we were dealing with and what I was talking about. And he said, when you are doing your work, he said, always look for people with intelligence, integrity, interest, and a willingness to make an investment. If you find someone in the system that has those 4 qualities, they will be able to hear you. If they don't have all 4 qualities, you're wasting your time. You're casting pearls before swine.
Yeah.
They can't get it. They won't get it. You're going to make yourself crazy by trying to explain it, and it's not you.
Right.
You simply do not have the capacity to hear what you are saying.
Yeah.
And I thought all I have to do is look for people with those 4 qualities. And they were everywhere.
Yeah. And
many of them were actually.
This is very important when you're hiring somebody, and when you are looking to find a doctor, you are hiring somebody. So you want to hire someone who has your best interest, who will listen to you. Hey, doctor, I have knee problems. I don't want to go straight to surgery. What can we try first? And if his philosophy is, ooh, I love to give surgery, I'm very good at it, and I've had success, then you don't want that doctor, because he's not going to invest the time to listen to you. He's not really interested in what you want. And so I know that you screen your doctors that you've had recently for knee surgery or whatnot to make sure that they are worthy of getting your time, and people have the privilege to help you. We're looking for helpers. We must speak up for ourselves when we're looking for helpers in our life.
I like to find out whether or not people are capable of remembering who I am.
Mm-hmm. That's good.
And if I think they can do that, I know my care is going to be better.
Yeah.
Because it's almost like they have a personal investment, because we're almost best friends.
Okay.
So my cancer surgeon, I took her roses my first visit.
Mm-hmm.
She sent me a personal thank you card.
Yeah.
When I was interviewing my knee surgeon, I said something that was very questionable.
Okay.
And he asked me a little bit about my history, and so I told him about the cancer, but I have the go ahead to do the knee surgery now. And I told him about going through a very difficult divorce. It wasn't difficult for me, but the process was difficult because it was, what do they call it? High conflict. It was a high conflict divorce.
Right.
And I said, I lost 2 blank, 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 blank last year.
Yeah.
And he tried so hard not to smile. Yeah. And he tried, and his face got red. He was probably Scandinavian, and he was red, and the neck. Yeah. And he finally just burst out laughing.
Yeah.
And I said, I'd like you to be my doctor.
Good.
And then I told him, I said, I'm going to be a joy to work with.
Yeah.
And he said, I can see that.
See, that's nice. He valued you. So another speaking up for yourself means maybe taking the time, maybe getting a second or a third opinion.
Or using your best assets.
Yeah.
And my best asset is using words and getting people's attention by saying something either outrageous or it starts with P, the word
persuasive.
No. I'll think of it later.
All right.
Something that's a little bit off-putting.
Okay.
Provocative.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, I present myself as having a great sense of humor and being a tad provocative.
All right.
And if they enjoy those sensibilities, then I know that it's going to, I feel very keenly that it's going to be okay. Yeah. Now, I also had an Asian doctor for my medical oncologist, and he was someone that I would not have said any of those things to.
Right. Maybe a little more serious demeanor.
Very
to the point,
very closed. But when he talked to me, mm-hmm. It didn't matter how much I cried or how incoherent I became. He stayed right on track.
Yeah,
he wasn't moved by my dis-ease or my disease.
Yeah,
he wasn't. He just totally focused on me. And he was not a touchy-feely guy, and I picked up on that right away. And so when it was time for me to leave, I gave him the elbow.
Oh, yeah.
And that was way before the CV thing.
Yeah.
And I said, I feel sorry for you guys. You have to wash your hands all the time.
Yeah, yeah.
I said, ordinarily I'd hug you, but I don't want to do that. So
yeah. So let me ask you a question.
That would have been too much for him.
Yeah. All right. So let's, it's obvious that you're comfortable with people. What can you speak to or say to the woman who is more on the quiet side, but she wants to advocate for herself, but her people around her, her friends, they do the ultrasound, they have the reveal parties. the woman's kind of quiet, but she kind of would like to break out of it, but she won't. She's having a hard time doing it. What about the timid woman who we'd really like to speak up for herself? What can you say?
She has to find within her community someone who had what she wants.
Oh, very good.
And let this other woman walk her through the process.
Okay.
She has to find a friendly soul who's not going to dismiss her concerns or her personal needs. If you have to ask her what you want. And if she wants someone who will listen to her and help her negotiate this thing, then that's what she needs to do. Okay. And she simply cannot get that from the ultrasound reveal party, et cetera, folks, because they don't have it this time. Maybe they'll get it later, but they don't have it yet.
Okay.
And so imitation is the most sincere form of flattery. Okay. And so if she sees someone she would like to imitate, then she has to go to that person and say, who did you use? Did you like them? You know, how many midwives did you talk to before you made your selection? What was your criteria for the selection? My criteria for the selection of a midwife, or anybody else actually, is in whose company do I feel the strongest? And there are women and a few men in whose company I feel like an Amazon. Okay. Yeah. Because I didn't let myself do that for about 10 years, but now I can feel it.
Right. Great.
Yeah. And the other question is, in what environment do I feel the safest? And that reminds me of a friend who was a midwife. Her daughter was having a baby. The mother was kind enough to select a midwife for her daughter because she knew that her daughter would not want the mother to be the midwife. So the mother selected a midwife for the daughter. And she told her dearly beloved that she was having the baby at home, and he swore that he wouldn't tell anybody because she wanted it very low-key, quiet. Okay. And so when she went into labor, she called him, and he wanted to come over. And she said, well, okay, but I don't know if I want you in the room with me or not. But if you're just here, that'll be fine.
Is that the father of the baby you're talking about? Yeah. Okay.
And so he came over with his parents and his siblings and his cousins.
Too many people. She
said, I asked you not to say anything. He said, but they're family. So here is a whole house full of very interested people in what was going on. And the midwife that she didn't choose, and her mother is hovering. And this poor young lady can't do it. She just can't do it. And so they eventually transferred her to the hospital, where she was among absolute strangers.
Yeah. Oh, that's terrible.
The baby slid right out.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Yeah. Yes. In her first environment, there was too much familiarity.
Okay. There was just too many.
She felt better with strangers. She felt safer with strangers than her circle of influence.
Okay. Interesting.
So, and I've heard of that before, where the daughter of a midwife will choose to have her baby in the hospital because she's anonymous there.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Yeah. Otherwise, she's midwife so-and-so's daughter.
Yeah.
We'll expect you to, have this baby in 3 pushes and no screaming and, everything's going to be fine. And the pressure is really high.
Yeah.
And so she would rather be an anonymous person among strangers.
Yeah.
Because that's where she feels the least scrutiny.
Right. All right. Here's another situation. How about the woman who's a very strong-willed? She's almost like a bulldozer. Her way of communication is really rough, and she doesn't really get her way, and she's a frustrated woman. So now we have an opposite where a woman is speaking up, but she's not getting the results that she would like. How can she soften? What advice can you give to her?
Well, the first thing I would say is, so is what you're doing working?
Okay.
And she said, no. And I would say, what is it about your delivery of the things that are important to you that is misfiring?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I do tend to come off a little strong. And I said, I've got a great idea on how you can minimize that.
Mm-hmm.
Don't ask about every possible situation and get their okay on you not having this, not having that, not having the questions would be different if she's talking to a midwife or if she's talking to an obstetrician or a family practice doctor. But she could say things like, she could play her hand without being offensive. She could say, so what position are women usually in when they give birth?
Mm-hmm.
With you?
Yeah.
Oh, well, they're always on their back with their legs in stirrup. Have you ever been curious or were interested in trying anything else? And if he says, no, not at all, then she doesn't even have to get into the other stuff. Because when we go to point A and we're dismissed, and then we go to point B, we're dismissed, the anger just keeps building.
Mm-hmm.
And she starts talking faster and she starts talking louder. Mm-hmm. And that's not working, but we already established that that wasn't working. So my advice to her would be narrow the focus down to something that is a given for you, that you want to choose your own position.
Right.
And if they can go, well, you know what? I never thought of that.
Yeah. That's great.
That'd
be great.
And then you can tell them a story about a woman in Minnesota, true story, woman in Minnesota who was Vietnamese. Oh, no, Hmong. I don't know how to pronounce it. Hmong.
Yeah.
And she didn't speak English, and she went to the hospital to have her baby, and they couldn't get her to lay down. They were finally able to get her into bed, but they couldn't get her to lay down. Uh-huh. And she insisted on squatting. And they could not, unless they tied her down, which they didn't want to do because the poor woman doesn't even speak English. Yeah. And she finally gave birth in the squatting position. And my friend, the doctor, yeah, and he it would be better just to let her do what she wants than to
no problem. It wasn't dangerous. It wasn't harming anything. Everything was fine.
He'd never seen anything like this before, but she seemed to know what she was doing, and there was no way she was going to lay down. So what do you do? Right. And so he told me this story, and I thought, well, some people can deal with a woman saying, I can't do that. Yeah. It just doesn't work for me. Yeah. And others say, well, I guess we're going to need to sedate you then. Oh, you don't want that caregiver. No, but try to ask gentler, specific questions that will tell you earlier rather than later whether or not that individual is even interested. Right. And the whole range of things that are important to you. So start with one thing and see how that goes. I went to a midwifery workshop one time, and the midwife had had pictures of different things, and she had the birth set up, and here's the woman, she's on a bed, and you have your table, and that's where all your instruments are, your suction, your this thing, and the scissors, and the woman's on her back. And I already knew that that did create some disadvantages for the mother. So I asked her, I said, what if she doesn't want to be on her back? Well, I want them to be on their back because it's easier for me.
Mm.
And that's exactly what the doctors say.
Yeah.
If they were going to examine their objectives, sometimes it lasts for hours. And, I can't be sitting on the floor or, I want her perineum right there at eye level when I'm comfortably sitting.
Yeah.
And any other position that she would be in would be too hard for me.
Yeah.
And we're not considering how difficult it might be for the mom. And we're also not considering that if she was vertical, perhaps the birth would go much quicker and he wouldn't have to sit anywhere for so long.
Right. Yeah. Very good. All right. Well, we are running low on time. And I think the last thing we want to say is open your eyes, right?
I want to say something. Listen to your gut.
Listen to your gut.
I wonder sometimes if that isn't why I got colon cancer. Because for more than 40 years, I was not listening to that flip-flop thing and that would happen in my stomach when something went awry.
Very interesting.
And I'm not blaming anybody for my cancer. If I'm going to blame anyone, it's going to be me, because I didn't speak up for myself or say, that's not right, and stick to that's not right instead of, I guess it was my fault.
Yeah.
I'll try to do better.
Yeah.
And so I'm not blaming anyone for it, because I'm the one, and I prayed, I said, please, 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 I can't deal with these headaches. I would get the most horrible migraine headaches. Yeah. And so the headaches stopped, and I pushed the pain down, down, down until it couldn't go down any farther. And then it was in the lowest part of my torso.
Wow.
That's where I pushed it to. And that's, of course, where the cancer developed. So I'm not blaming anyone for this. I used the knowledge that I had to do the best that I could under difficult circumstance. And I could have made other choices, and I did contemplate them from time to time, but I wanted to be a wife. I wanted to be a mom. I wanted to be a member of my community. I wanted us to have a happy life. I wanted grandchildren. I wanted the whole thing, like my parents did, and it just didn't work out that way. So listen to your gut.
And I will also say, open your eyes. Pay attention and be observant. You don't have to, it's not a given what other people are trying to tell you what you should do. So be courageous.
Well, I think people should tell you what you should do, because then you know whether or not to accept their ideas or to disregard them.
Okay. All right. You have to be
absolutely clear on what you should do. And then you can say, I'll have to think about that.
Okay.
Or that's a notion that I hadn't considered.
Okay.
Because we don't want people to polish their language in our presence.
Right.
If you think that I should have ultrasound, fetal monitor, yada 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 yada, I want you to say so.
Okay.
And then I can go, I think I'll do a little research on that. I'm going to find out whether or not the countries that have the best outcomes use all those things all the time.
Yeah.
That's kind of a measure of what works and what doesn't, who has the best outcomes. Yeah. And being non-confrontational will give you way more information than, anything else. And we have to love talking to people whose ideas and opinions are different than ours. That's one of the gifts that a person I married gave me, is he is totally into the other paradigm.
Yeah.
And I didn't even know there were at least two paradigms. I'm sure there's more than that. But when I understood that he represented the dominant paradigm, I was, Oh, and I'm on the other side. I'm in the small group.
Yeah.
And the small group almost always has to concede to the larger group unless they find the rest of their small group.
Which is wonderful.
Yeah. Because you only need a small group to say, you didn't sound so good over the phone, so I thought I'd come over and watch your baby for you so you could take a walk around the block very quickly. I got back, and guess what she was doing? She was nursing my daughter.
Yeah.
And she said, I didn't know what else to do. She was crying.
Yeah.
And I was so grateful. I thought, you are a wonderful woman that would put someone else's child to your breast. And I thought, it was something that I had never thought of. And she said, I didn't know what else to do. She was crying.
Yeah.
And I was gone like 6 minutes.
Yeah. That's great. That's great.
She
and
was
it's a skill.
And I was fine.
Yeah. I was going to say, Jody, it's a skill that to work on our communication skills when we disagree and when we differ, and we shouldn't run away and quiet down. We should have the courage to try to discuss and present our ideas, because when you start pushing them out.
Only if they have intelligence, integrity, interest, and a willingness to make an investment. If they don't have those qualities, you are wasting your time.
True.
And you can go to the people who have at least some of those qualities and try out your ideas. Try out well, what do you think of this? Or does this sound reasonable? We can't have all of our friends have all of those qualities.
Correct.
But all of my friends have at least some of those qualities.
Right.
And I know who I can go to who will argue with me or give me a bit of a bad time. And I trust those people.
Yeah.
And I know folks that will agree with me like all the time. And I like that too.
Yeah.
But if I want to improve my thinking process or my ability to hold their ideas and my ideas in separate hands without discomfort,
right.
You have to ask for what you want. You have to ask for what you want. And it's amazing how much you have to verbalize it. You have to say it to at least one person and say it to yourself. I wanted to keep the house. I wanted to stay in this house. It's a lovely little house, and it's got a beautiful view. And I finally found someone who believed me when I said, whatever I can do, I want to stay here. This was after the divorce.
Right.
And I found someone. Finally, I found someone. And it was from the ad in the paper.
Right. An ad in the paper. Who would have thought? That's great.
Yeah.
All right, Jody, it's been a pleasure. It's been a great conversation, and have a great week. All right.
I will. Bye-bye. Thank you.